I buried my wife at 2:13 that afternoon. At 6:24, I heard her unlock the front door. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I just sat there on the couch in the same black funeral suit, staring at the hallway like my body had forgotten how to react. Then I heard it again, her keys, the soft metallic drop of them hitting the bowl near the entryway. Then her voice, calm, tired, familiar. She said, "You're still awake?" That was my wife's voice, the exact pitch of it, the rhythm, even the little breath she always took before finishing a sentence when she'd had a long day. The only problem was, I had already buried her. I had stood beside a grave while strangers lowered her into the ground. I had signed paperwork, shaken hands, watched the dirt fall, and now, less than 4 hours late, she was home from work. My wife, Lena, died on a Thursday. That's one of the first things grief does to you. It turns your life into dates and times. Not memories, not feelings. Just hard little facts your brain can hold on to. Thursday, 2:13 p.m. That was the official time on the paperwork. A highway accident on the way home from work. Another driver crossed the median and hit her car almost head-on. That was how the officer explained it to me. I remember the hospital waiting room, the vending machine hum, the sound my shoes made on the tile. I remember them not wanting me to see her for long. I remember identifying her mostly by what she was carrying. Her ring, her necklace, her bag. And that still bothers me, because after enough hours pass, the thing that keeps returning is not the certainty that she died. It's the uncertainty in the places around it, the parts your mind didn't fully absorb because it couldn't. The funeral happened fast, too fast. Her parents wanted it quick. Her sister handled most of it because I was barely speaking in complete sentences. I signed where they told me to sign, nodded when people talked to me, accepted water I never drank. By the afternoon, I was sitting under a grey sky watching my wife being lowered into the ground. I didn't cry at the burial, not because I didn't love her, because I was too tired to cry, too emptied out, too shocked by the speed of it. It didn't feel real, not in the way death is supposed to feel real. It felt administrative, like something that happened to our paperwork before it happened to our lives. When it was over, people hugged me and said the same things people always say. Then they all went home, and I went back to ours. The house felt wrong the second I stepped inside. Not haunted. Not yet. Just wrong in the plain human way a house feels when one person has been removed from it too suddenly. There were flowers on the kitchen counter, a casserole dish covered in foil, her shoes still by the door. Her travel mug was still in the sink. Her charger was still plugged in by the bed. Every object in the house was acting like she was still due home. That was the part I couldn't stand. Grief isn't just missing someone. It's being ambushed by the logic of ordinary objects. The lamp she always left on, the grocery list on the fridge, the blanket she hated because it shed lint on everything. I changed out of my dress shirt but kept the black pants on. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me still believed the day wasn't over yet. I sat on the couch for a long time without turning on the television, without checking my phone, without doing anything except listening to a house that no longer had her inside it. I remember looking at the clock once, 6:24. Then I heard keys at the lock. At first I thought it was one of her parents, or maybe her sister coming back because she was worried about me being alone. That would have made sense. Everything after that did not. The deadbolt turned. The front door opened. I heard heels against the hardwood. A bag dropped gently onto the entry table, and then her voice came from the hallway. Soft and ordinary and tired in that way it always sounded when she got home after work. She said, "You're still awake." I don't know how long I sat there before I stood up. It could have been 2 seconds. It could have been 20. My body felt slow and numb and impossibly alert at the same time. Then she stepped into the living room, still in her work clothes. Same dark slacks, same cream blouse, same hair pinned up too loosely like she always did when she was in a rush. She looked at me and frowned a little. Then she asked, "Why are you dressed like that?" I wish I could tell you I screamed, or ran, or knew immediately that what I was looking at couldn't be real, but I didn't. Because grief does something cruel when it's fresh. It doesn't just break you, it makes the impossible feel negotiable. And for one awful, beautiful second, I wanted it to be her more than I wanted reality. I said her name once, just once, quietly, like I was afraid saying it louder would break whatever impossible thing had happened in my living room. She tilted her head the way she always did when I sounded strange. Then she smiled, but only a little, tired, almost amused, and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." There are some sentences that become unbearable depending on who says them. That one nearly dropped me to the floor. She asked if I was sick. Then she stepped closer and reached for my face. I flinched before I could stop myself. That expression hurt her, and that was almost worse, because she reacted exactly the way Lena would have reacted. Not angry, just confused. Then she asked why the house smelled like flowers, why there were sympathy cards on the counter, why there were extra dishes in the kitchen. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She walked past me into the kitchen. She opened the refrigerator and said she wasn't hungry. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Not because she said it, because she said it in the same distracted tone she used every night she skipped dinner after a stressful day. Too exact, too practiced. I followed her into the kitchen and asked her to turn around. She did. I asked where she had been. She said, "At work. Where else would I be?" Then she asked what was wrong with me. I stared at her face so hard my eyes hurt. I was looking for something, anything, a shadow that fell incorrectly, a missing detail, a crack in the performance. But everything was right. The tiny scar near her eyebrow, the chipped pale pink polish on one thumbnail, the dark circles under her eyes, the line at the corner of her mouth that only showed when she was tired. I said, "Lena, I buried you today." She didn't laugh, didn't recoil, didn't become monstrous. She just looked at me with this long, unreadable expression. Then she said something so quietly I almost missed it. She said, "No, you didn't." That sentence lived inside my chest for the rest of the night. Not because it sounded threatening, because it sounded certain. Like I was the one confused, like I had misunderstood the most important event of my own life. And if you're wondering whether I called someone right then, police, her sister, anyone at all, I didn't, because I was already inside the logic of it by then, already doing what grieving people do when reality becomes unbearable. I was choosing the version that hurt less. I told myself I was in shock, that I was hallucinating. Anything was easier to accept than the idea that something was standing in my kitchen wearing my wife like a memory. So I let the moment continue. That was my mistake. For the next hour, she moved through the house exactly the way Lena always had. She kicked off her shoes by the door, rinsed out her travel mug, set her work bag on the dining chair instead of the hook, where I was always telling her to hang it. If horror had stopped there, I might have believed it. But then the wrongness started leaking through. Little things, tiny failures in the imitation. She asked if I had fed Rosie. Rosie was our dog. Rosie had died 3 years earlier. There was no way she would have forgotten that. I stared at her and asked what she meant. She looked at me like I was being difficult and said, "The dog. Did you feed her?" That was the second moment the house stopped feeling like mercy. Later, when she sat at the kitchen table, she started complaining about a woman named Marissa from work. Only Lena hadn't worked with a Marissa in years, and when I pointed that out, she just blinked once and changed the subject. She never ate. That bothered me more than it should have. She said she wasn't hungry. Then later, she said it again. Then once more, after midnight when I offered tea just to hear her say something ordinary. I remember watching her hands instead. They looked normal, but she touched nothing she didn't need to. The edge of the mug, the chair back, the light switch, the banister, like she understood the purpose of objects, but not the comfort people take in them. At one point, she walked past the hallway mirror, and I could have sworn her reflection was a fraction of a second behind her. Not enough to call it obvious, just enough to turn my blood cold. I looked away, then back, and it was fine. Or maybe I wanted it to be. By then, that was becoming the pattern of the night. See something impossible. Convince myself I hadn't. Lose a little more of myself. Around 11, she stood in the bedroom doorway and asked if I was coming to bed. I told her I'd sleep on the couch. She smiled in this small, tired way and said, "You always do that when you're scared." Lena used to say that too, only on the worst nights, and hearing it from her mouth now made something hot and sick rise into my throat. Because that was the whole trap of her. Every wrong thing was wrapped inside something right. Every warning came dressed as a memory. That's what made her dangerous. Not that she looked like my wife, that she understood exactly how to make me want her to stay. I must have dozed off sometime after midnight. Not slept, just drifted. What woke me was the sound of the bathroom sink running. At first, I thought it was a dream. Then I realized the hallway light was on. I hadn't left it on, and neither had Lena, real Lena. Always turned lights off. She was obsessive about it. I sat up slowly and listened. The water was running steadily. No footsteps, No drawer sounds, no humming, just water. I stood up and walked toward the hallway. Every part of the house felt sharper at night. The edges of furniture, the framed wedding photo on the wall, the little bowl by the front door where her keys still sat. Her keys still there. That stopped me cold. Because if her keys were there, why did I hear them when she came in? I kept walking. The bathroom door was open a few inches, warm light spilling across the hall, the sink still running. I pushed the door wider. No one was inside. Mirror clear, counter dry, toothbrush, cup untouched. Just the faucet running into an empty sink. I shut it off and stood there listening to the pipes settle. Then, from behind me, from the direction of the bedroom, her voice said, "You always leave water running when you're upset." I spun around so fast I hit the door frame with my shoulder. She was standing halfway down the hall, barefoot, still, looking directly at me. No expression, no sleep in her face, no confusion. Just watching. I asked her what happened to her. I didn't mean to say it out loud. It just came out. Not what happened today. Not where were you, I asked. What happened to you? She held my stare for so long I started to feel stupid for having asked. Then she said, "You tell me." That was the first moment I was truly afraid to be in the house with her. Not because she raised her voice, because for the first time it sounded like whatever was standing there knew exactly what it was. She went back into the bedroom. I heard the bed shift once, then nothing. I stayed in the hallway for what felt like an hour, looking at the bathroom, looking at the keys by the door, looking at the dark rectangle of the bedroom. Eventually, I did the one thing I had been avoiding all night. I opened her work bag. The bag looked normal. That was the worst part. Ordinary weight, ordinary zipper sound, ordinary contents. Wallet, receipts, lip balm, a compact, a set of keys I didn't recognize, a folded employee lanyard. I pulled the badge out first. At a glance, it looked like hers. Hospital photo. Her face, her name, but not right, not current. The photo was younger, a version of her from years earlier. The hospital name on the badge hit me next. It wasn't the hospital where she worked before she died. It was the one she had worked at nearly a decade earlier, a place that had closed years ago. I turned the badge over. There was an old faded inventory sticker on the back, almost peeled away, and printed across it in tiny dark numbers was 213. I stared at it until the numbers stopped feeling like numbers. Then I started digging faster. Receipts from places that no longer existed. Parking slips with dates that made no sense. An old transit card she had stopped using after we moved. Every item in the bag was hers, but not from now, from pieces of her life that did not belong together. Like someone had built her from mismatched years and sent her home incomplete. That was when I went back to the funeral folder, the one I had left unopened on the coffee table because I couldn't bear to look at it. I opened it and read everything again. The report, the release forms, the hospital notes. And there, buried in the middle of all that sterile language, was the sentence I had somehow missed before. Due to the condition of the remains, identification had been made under compromised visual circumstances. I read that line over and over. Compromised visual circumstances, meaning I had never really seen her clearly, meaning I had trusted jewelry, clothing, belongings, meaning the certainty I had built my grief on was thinner than I wanted it to be. That was when I heard water again. Not from the bathroom this time, from the bedroom. Soft, rhythmic, not sink water, something wet touching the floor. I dropped the folder and went into the hallway. The bedroom door was open. The room was empty. The bed was perfectly made. No one inside. The front door was still locked. I checked it with shaking hands. Deadbolt in place. Chain untouched. Then I looked down. There were wet footprints on the hallway floor. Bare feet. Dark prints against the wood. Starting near the bedroom. Crossing the hall. Leading directly to the mirror at the end. And stopping there. No return prints. No trail away. Just a line of wet footsteps ending at the glass. I don't know how long I stood there before I looked up. The mirror was fogged slightly at the center, like someone had breathed against it, and written across that thin pale mist in a slow, uneven hand were 5 words. You buried the wrong one. I don't remember backing away. I don't remember falling. I only remember the silence after. No voice, no footsteps, no bedroom creak, nothing. Just me, the mirror, and the locked front door. I never slept in that house again. The grave is still there. Her name is still on it. And I still don't know whether something came home wearing my wife's shape, or whether the thing I buried never was. But sometimes, late at night, when I pass a mirror in a dark room, I still catch myself checking the floor first, just to make sure there aren't footprints ending where no one should be able to stand. Grief doesn't always bring people back. Sometimes it only opens the door for something else to come home.